Welcome to the Transformation Talks podcast, in-depth conversations on transformation with Rajiv Dingra, founder and CEO of RDNX Network.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Transformation Talks podcast. Today we have someone who goes back 14 years. I remember meeting him at all these conferences in India. And he's been in the news recently as well, taking his company public on NASDAQ. Let me, introduce you to those who have not yet been introduced to Mr. Amar Goel, who founded PubMatic, which recently went public. He founded it in 2006. He's a serial entrepreneur and the company's first CEO. Now, as Chief Innovation Officer, founder, and chairman, Amar runs PubMatic's marketplace group. And as part of this role, Amar focuses on data and algorithmic product innovation, machine learning, and marketplace quality. As chairman, he's responsible for helping PubMatic's board and management team that drive the company's overall strategy. Amar and his brother Rajiv took PubMatic public on NASDAQ, raising over $115 million at a valuation of over $1.4 billion in December 2020. That's just a few months ago. In addition to PubMatic, Amar has also founded several other companies, including Comely Media, the leading independent advertising technology platform in the APAC region. Even as a 19-year-old student at Harvard, Amar co-founded chipshot.com, and over 5 years, he grew that business to approximately $30 million in annual sales, making Chipshot the fastest growing e-commerce website at that time. So as an entrepreneur, Amar has raised over $100 million in venture capital, hired more than 1,000 employees around the globe, generating several $100 million per year in revenue at peak. I am extremely excited and honored to welcome Amar Goel to Transformation Talks. Thanks, Amar, for joining us. Welcome to Transformation Talks.
Thanks a lot, Rajiv. Nice to reconnect on this podcast, and good to be here, and excited for what you're doing with your new adventure too.
Thanks for that, Amar. It's been such a journey, 14 years, and now almost 15 years. 2021 has arrived. Talk us through the journey of PubMatic. Starting 14 years ago. You couldn't possibly have imagined it to be listed on NASDAQ, and couldn't possibly have predicted all that happened over 14 years. So what were those key milestones, pivot points, and evolutionary moments over the last 14 years?
PubMatic is a company that provides digital advertising infrastructure to help publishers and buyers monetize their inventory and achieve their marketing outcomes. Right. So we provide what's called a supply side platform. We provide publishers a set of technology that they use to sell their advertising, digital advertising programmatically, which means that it's being bid on in real time. And then buyers are then able to use that infrastructure layer to target that inventory and to achieve their marketing goals. And we started in 2006. Today we work with over 1,200 publishers. We serve hundreds of billions of ads a day through our infrastructure of thousands of servers around the world. And it's quite a high scale environment where we're processing many petabytes of information a day. And so it's really kind of a high compute set of infrastructure for digital advertising. It's been a winding journey. Many ups, certainly a lot of ups recently, many downs throughout it too. So I think if I think back, certainly when I started the company in late 2006, we started with actually something called ad network optimization. So we were trying to help publishers optimize their different ad networks they had. And we were the first, SSP to launch in the world. We kind of created the category. There were no DSPs either, and but to be fair, like programmatic advertising as we think about it today didn't really exist And there was some talk about it, but we really sort of said, hey, we think this is an interesting growing area and publishers are going to need a lot of help. And that was kind of where we got launched. So that was kind of certainly one, interesting milestone. We really kind of, maybe another one I would think about is we created the first kind of supply side RTB transactions. And the first connections were actually between us and a company called Invite Media, which was a buy-side DSP. We were acquired by Google. And, that was actually quite interesting because we built this thing. We said, hey, we're going to sell this, sell impressions in real time programmatically. And there weren't actually any buyers to connect. And I actually remember one of our engineers, really good guy, he spent some time kind of yelling at me on the phone about how when we were building new products, we need to better understand the market and better, assess whether there's going to be any real demand for it. And it's hard to believe that now, today, if you look forward, there's hundreds of billions of dollars of media being transacted via real-time bidding and RTB, and I think it's continuing to grow dramatically. And the other thing that maybe other milestone I might mention is that we launched a product a long time ago. I forget the exact time frame. It might have been even 2011 or 10 or something like that. It was called Decision Manager, and it took bids and integrated it into directly into the ad server. And so it was really a precursor to header bidding, but which has sort of transformed the programmatic digital advertising ecosystem. But we didn't really think about it like that. We didn't properly understand what we were messing around with and the big opportunity that was ahead of us.
Sounds great. So Amar, you spoke about the various pivots in your journey over the last 14 years, especially in PubMatic. How did you, and you also mentioned about this engineer whom you had a call with, and he said that you should assess the market before you launch a product, and so on and so forth. So a lot of times when you're launching products in such a journey where you are entering into markets that you don't even know exist today or will exist tomorrow, how did those decisions to get into those products or invest in the unknown happen at PubMatic? What was that process like, for our...
Yeah, no, good question. I think, it's definitely an interesting evolution, right? And you definitely learn a lot along the way. I mean, obviously when I started the company, there was 3 co-founders there as well. There was Mukul Kumar, who's in Pune, Anand Das, who's here in the Bay Area, Rajiv, my brother, who's the CEO out here. And it was a very small team, let me say. And now, we have well over 500 employees, and we have 12 or 13 offices around the world, California, across Europe. So, you learn a lot about how you work with, we're not huge, we're not a massive company by any stretch, but we're certainly much bigger than we were, 4 people out of my apartment, in 2006. And so, you really learn a lot about how to scale a business and how to work with people, different cultures, all those kinds of things. You talk about how do you make decisions with products. I mean, I think that's one of those things that actually I think a lot of the fundamentals stay the same whether you're small or large. And that's actually something I would say I kind of really enjoy, is these early days of finding really product market fit, and I think trying to really figure out if you have a business. I think I really love that part of the early stage process. I think I'm a good executor, but I certainly like to live in the world of ideas and possibilities. And I think that that's something where you but I think that at the same time, you have to bring a lot of rigor to it, when you're launching a new product. The reality is that a lot of times those products fail, but I think you have to really approach it with an open mind. So you have some hypothesis about some product that's going to work, and you really need to go and I think talk to a lot of people. I think one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs I see do is and I've talked about this with other people too, they go out, they have an idea, and they talk to a bunch of people, and they get that feedback, and they kind of cherry pick the parts of the feedback that fit their vision of the world, and they kind of disregard everything that is, that maybe disagrees with what their thesis is. And I think you really have to be open to listening to all that feedback and writing it down and really trying to process it. And sure, people are going to make random comments and things that aren't a fit, but if you start hearing something multiple times, I think you really have to be honest and include that feedback in your idea. Either have an answer for it or adjust your idea. And I think that openness of really listening and evaluating is really important to the early stage process. And so I think you really have to think about it as a journey, that, okay, a lot of people think about, I launched my alpha or I launched my beta, and okay, now it's going to tear up the world. But I think if you think about it as, hey, this is going to be a 2-year journey to find something that has product market fit and is providing value and is resonating with customers, then I think you're not disappointed when at first your product doesn't get acclaim or a lot of usage or a lot of signups.
Amar, that's fascinating. It sounds like a 14-year journey of product discovery. But I'd like to believe, and the way you mentioned it as well, is that it's also a journey of self-discovery as an entrepreneur, correct? And you've gone through this process with your team over the last decade plus, and you yourself mentioned that you are now more than a 500 people team, and at that time it was just 4 of you in an apartment. To a lot of people, that's a massive difference, right? Being from in Pune to and also in California, and then now being listed and across multi geographies, petabytes of data, the scale difference is massive. What kind of transformation as an entrepreneur? What kind of self-discovery do you go through over these 14 years? And what would be your learnings that you'd like to share with the audience? How did you change, let's say?
Yeah, I think that there, like you said, there is a lot of change through the process. I actually think sometimes you learn the most when you go through tough spots. When you struggle through something or you fail at something. Frankly, I think that's really times when I think you're forced to look inward a little bit and get better perspective. So I think that's the time when you can really introspect a lot and learn. I think entrepreneurship can be very tough. It can be a long road. I think for much of my career, I would say that I have not felt successful. So I think that comes part and parcel with starting companies. There's so much beta in those. And what do you read in the press, right? You read all about the companies that are doing great and the companies that raised a huge round or sold for a lot, and so you kind of think that's what's happening for everybody. And that's just not the case. And by the way, even when somebody sells or goes public or raises a big round, I mean, those are really nice points in the journey, but there's still lots of tough things happening at those companies, good or bad, and they will have tough times in the future. Another company I started called Comly, which was a digital advertising company in India, Southeast Asia. We sold that company in 2015, but we went through some tough times near the end, and in terms of the sales process and whatnot. And the last couple of years, and when I come back as CEO, and I would say that actually really helped me. I mean, it was hard then, but today it's helped me get much better perspective about people and relationships. I would say that before that, I think I tended to focus a lot more on the numbers and the products, and I think that experience helped me realize that this is a whole journey that you're on, and your life is going along as you build this company, and so you should really enjoy it, and you should really understand what you're going through and learning from it and celebrating the wins and whatnot. And so I think that really helped me get better perspective. Certainly start caring about people more and seeing people, as people in the business. So that's been something I think that's helped me.
That's fascinating. You talking about the self-discovery of how entrepreneurship made you, a different person in some ways, and also the definition of success. It's not a destination, as you pointed out. It's a process. It's the sum of all the learnings over the last 14 years that you would probably term as success, and not a number now. Would that be correct to say?
Yeah, I think that's good way to put it.
Yeah. Fantastic, Amar. Fantastic. So let's, the way you speak, it comes across even in this audio podcast that you are literally reliving through each of these moments that you talk about as you speak about them. It'll be great if we can take a little bit more out of your experience and talk about the adtech industry that you've been part of now for over a decade and a half. You've seen the last decade, which is 2010 to 2020, and you had what I would call as a front row seat on seeing how adtech has transformed, and in many ways you've been a contributor to that transformation as well through PubMatic and through Comly. Looking ahead, 2021 to 2030, what do you see for adtech? What are your, if not predictions, areas of bullishness, momentum, things you think will grow? What are the areas that of concern and the industry needs to sort itself out? What are the areas that you believe will not grow possibly? If you could delve upon these three aspects on the future of adtech, and maybe if you want to talk about what the last decade taught you as well on the adtech industry front, if you want to connect the last and the future decade, we'd love to hear from you on that.
Yeah. So I think, I'm sure it's almost a little trite, but in sort of joke in ad tech, the only constant is change, right? So, I mean, it's a very fast moving, dynamic industry. There's always a lot going on.
Correct.
But that being said, I think that there are trends, as you kind of asked about, that play out over time. And it's a large industry now, so it's not like everything changes overnight. We really, I still remember, like in the very first deck we had, talking about how there's so much data in digital advertising, but people weren't really using it. And there was a big opportunity to use that data in a much, much richer way. And I think that continues to be, I think, the real impetus behind programmatic advertising, that you can leverage your data to drive better outcomes and better for marketers and better outcomes better monetization for publishers. And so we kind of have the saying that all advertising is going digital and all digital is going programmatic. And that's something that I think we really wholeheartedly believe. I think 10 years ago, maybe a few people would agree with that. I think there's a lot more people that agree with that. Today, not everybody certainly, but we think in 2030, 2040, that will be the case. All advertising will be digital and all digital will be programmatic. And so
let me understand that. So Amar, sorry to cut you in, but I wanted to understand this. You're basically saying all advertising. That means everything on television, everything on even OOH will be digital and it will be programmatic. Correct? That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's what I wanted to rephrase that for the audience so that they truly understand what you said, that by 2030, everything is going to be programmatic, every kind of advertising, right?
Yeah, I didn't say by 2030, but let's say in the next 10, 20 years, we think all.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So that you're absolutely right. All television ads will be sold. It'll be all digital, and then as it becomes all digital, it'll become all programmatically available.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating. Please continue.
Of course, that's certainly what we believe. So a big part of, then if you kind of double click underneath that, then, we think that some of the big important trends are, one is that there will continue to be monetization across many different channels, right? Wherever consumers are spending their time is where you will have, we call it omni-channel, but it really means a cross-channel kind of monetization for publishers. So mobile app, mobile web, video, display, CTV, right? Audio, right? I mean, all these things are going to move more and more to digital and then move to programmatic. And so that is, we think a big trend. If we just look at India, we work with, a significant number of major publishers, Times Internet, HT, Network 18, a bunch of OTT players like MX Players, E5, Voo, Truecolor, Daily Hunt, Sportskeeda. So I mean, those are apps. But my point is, like, we're already even certainly India is a digital forward market, but we're working with lots of players, and we think that will continue to grow at a rapid rate. Another big trend we see happening in our arena is around something called supply path optimization. So we think agencies and advertisers are really starting to consolidate their spend with fewer, larger technology platforms. So that could be certainly Google or Facebook, but it can also be major demand side platforms. And certainly we see that happening with our business in the supply side. It's happening in things like, IQ, inventory quality vendors. It's happening with viewability vendors. So you have, as the industry matures, you have, fewer vendors that the buyers are working with to consolidate their spend, improve transparency, quality, control over essentially their investment dollars, over their ad dollars. So that's kind of another big trend. And then maybe one other one I'll just mention, which I think is a very, very big and important trend, is around identity. There's a lot of changes happening to how targeting is done on the internet, how it's done in mobile app, and how marketers are able to personalize ads, how consumers are able to be reached and marketed to. And so we think there's a big opportunity there, but that's certainly a big area of change and like I said, opportunity over the next 10 years.
Sure, that's interesting. And do you have any take on Google's recent stance on not having any alternate to the way of tracking, which is cookies, and not, or at least not openly and publicly supporting the email ID-led, unique ID propositions that several players in globally are working on.
Yeah, I mean, we think that what Google came out with earlier last week, is really in line with what they've been saying, right? They have said, hey, we want to move, we want to remove third-party targeting, third-party cookie targeting, and we want to move it to Chrome. And they've been floating kind of various proposals to do that. And so this was really Google's ads group saying, we're going to follow what Chrome does. I mean, that's kind of how I interpreted what they said. So I think we felt like it's actually clarity that solidifies that the open internet has and vendors to the open internet have a bigger opportunity to help the ecosystem survive and thrive in that world.
Interesting. You've been on the ad tech side, on the publisher side. You've had interactions with agencies. You've also had interactions with direct marketers and brands themselves. For a marketer and a brand in this day and era, there are hundreds of providers, maybe even thousands in some cases, across the adtech, martech spectrum. And now with the cookie-less world and multiple unique ID providers as well coming up, there are different players claiming different things. And if even in earlier, when digital marketing was scaling up, let's say 10 years ago, the problem was there was, SEO, SEM, social, 10 different things in digital marketing and 10 different vendors who were coming and selling to the marketers and clients. Now in ad tech and martech also, there are, multiple different players in the market. Now, when, let's say, you come across a marketer or a CMO and he sort of asks your view on how should large marketers consolidate their ad tech or martech stack, what is your advice to them?
About how they should consolidate their stack?
Yes, in terms of how should they go about it, in terms of should they, and you did, touch upon this, saying that there will be few players in the future, but currently there aren't, right? Currently there are too many, let's say. What is your sort of suggestion to top marketers and CMOs? What should they focus on to build better marketing stack, better martech stack, so that they are able to drive better results for their brands, whether it's brand performance or ROI performance led marketing campaigns? How should they align themselves technologically? What are the areas that they should focus on? If someone would come and ask your advice as a senior marketer of a brand, so as to say.
Yeah, I think every brand has to start with what matters to it, right? What are the goals that they have? And I think, for example, if you look at the most sophisticated, largest marketers in the world, they are more and more data driven. They are more and more focused on transparency. They are more, I think, collaborative than ever because the world is moving quickly. And so I think a lot of them look for things like, hey, we're less focused on having one vendor who can do everything for us, as an example, but we want to make sure, but as long as we can stitch it together, and we might incur some expense and pain for that, but at the same point, that brings us better capabilities in certain areas, right? And make sure we have transparency and independence. So I think that's something that we hear a lot of the biggest marketers in the world want. I think a lot of times when you go to the other side, when you have smaller marketers, medium-sized, I mean, I think they're more focused on ease of operation, ease of use. They may be willing to give up transparency. They may be really willing to give up independence in terms of, for example, in digital, there's been a lot of issues with various folks doing the measurement on their own marketing spend, right? Many of the big platforms like Google and Facebook have done this a lot, saying, hey, we don't allow any third-party measurement in. We're going to tell you how your ads are performing. Well, there's been a lot of scandals around that where it turns out that having somebody mark their own homework isn't necessarily the best thing. But they do provide some operational ease of use by having everything integrated together. So I think we see a lot of smaller marketers prefer that. But I would say that, like I said before, if you go back up the scale to the largest marketers, I think they're getting more sophisticated, more demanding, and more data-driven.
That's fascinating. Amar, this is going to be my last question, but it's going to be one that's targeted to the young and upcoming entrepreneurs in terms of if you were to advise, the Amar Goel of today, in the sense that not that you aren't, but somebody who's 30 years old and starting in adtech and martech, so as to say, today. And, what would be the areas of immense opportunity for a young new startup to start today in adtech and martech globally? What would be those 1, 2, or 3 areas that you would, advise them to look at more closely?
If we go back to some of the comments I made earlier, it was really about thinking about it as a journey to find product market fit. So I would say it's more about finding an area that you're excited about, that you're passionate about. Hopefully you have some insight or some unique thought about something. So you try to go in with some idea about something and some solution that you can solve a problem for people. But go into an area that's growing fast, ideally, and that's going to be a big market. And if you think about it as, okay, we have idea 1 and we're going to build some prototype or some POC, and we're going to get it out to some people and see what kind of traction we get, you should just assume that that's going to bomb. But as long as you're listening, keeping your ear close to the ground and listening and improving and iterating along the way, over time, I think you can find your way to a decent business. Maybe it'll be a great business. Maybe it'll be an okay business. But you can find yourself to a viable business. And if it's in a good area that's fast growing, where it has good characteristics, like you don't have a few vendors that own the whole market, it's an area where you have customers that are willing to pay, things like that, then I think you can really end up with a great business, and it's a good area to invest a decade or so of your career in. So that would be really, my advice to hopefully a young founder who is excited to get started on a business.
That's fascinating. You're saying to keep an open mind, to experiment, to go on a discovery journey, to consider failure as the default, and work with that failure to improve so that you eventually find success. Amar, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation across your journey of 14 years, across PubMatic's journey, across adtech and where it is headed, as well as some insight for young entrepreneurs who probably want to follow your footsteps, to know what it takes to actually lead a successful company and someday listed on the global stock exchange. Thank you so much, Amar, for being with us on Transformation Talks. It has been an absolute honor to have you with us.
Thanks, Rajiv. I don't know about honor, but I appreciate it. It's not kind of you to say, and it was nice to chat, and looking forward to the podcast coming out.
Thanks for listening to the Transformation Talks podcast hosted by Rajiv Dingra, founder and CEO of adtech Network. Tune in next week for another interesting episode.